I've been dreaming of a true love's kiss. Nasally singing. Why is it so undesirable? What causes it, and how do we fix it? In today's video, I'm going to answer these 3 questions for you. If you were to listen to the radio or other music streaming source for a couple of hours, playing pop or alternative rock, you probably wouldn't hear much in the way of nasalized singing. Just here or there on the occasional vowel or the use of it for artistic effect to color the vocal phrase a certain way, but not nasality that is very pronounced and that's pervasive throughout the entire song. And that's because nasality is generally considered to be an undesirable quality in the singing tone. There seems to be a fair bit of listener consensus regarding this. Not only is hypernasality annoying and unpleasant, but it actually weakens the vocal sound, the output, which makes it even more undesirable from a vocal power perspective. It thins it and it creates a resonance imbalance. So whenever nasal formants, those are resonance frequencies of the nasal passages, are introduced, oral formants are either diminished or lost altogether. And that's because nasal resonance introduces anti-resonances or zeros into the spectrum. So even though the singer may feel a very strong sense of resonance in the mask, this isn't necessarily translating to the listener as a strong vocal sound. The nasally sound will also be a bit brighter. It will have a preponderance of higher overtones represented in the sound because the nasal cavities are small cavities that resonate at higher frequencies than does the oral cavity, and this further contributes to this thinness of the nasally singing voice. Nasality enters the tone whenever the velum, the soft palate, is lowered, which opens up the velopharyngeal port that leads to the nasal passages. Your uvula, it looks a little bit like a punching bag at the back of your mouth. It dangles from the top of the soft palate, which arches a little bit like a dome and forms the separation between the mouth and the pharynx, and that's how you'll be able to identify your soft palate. Take out a hand mirror and watch your soft palate's behavior whenever you're inhaling deeply through the mouth or whenever you're singing your ah vowel. It should move up and back. Ideally, during most speech sounds, the soft palate elevates and retracts like this in order to seal off the nasal port. The lateral and posterior walls of the pharynx are also part of this valving mechanism. The old textbooks on linguistics and speech suggested that this seal formed by the soft palate and the nasal pharynx was tight, complete. But we now know from more recent research that this seal isn't necessarily as complete during speech or even singing as was once presumed and taught. It's all about degree though. The more open the nasal port, the more resonance will be filtered through the nasal passages, and then the more perceptible the nasality will be. In English, we have only 3 nasalized sounds. That's the M, N, and NG. All other sounds are considered to be oral sounds in which the nasal port is effectively closed and the sound should be coming out of the mouth only. There are some languages, such as French, for which nasality is phonemic in that the meaning of the word can be changed if the pronunciation of the vowel is nasalized. For example, beau, meaning beautiful in French, versus bon, meaning good. If the French speaker doesn't nasalize the vowel when it's supposed to be nasalized, it's a different word. But in English, all vowels should be spoken and sung without perceptible nasality. So, how do we know if we're singing through the nose? One centuries-old trick is to occlude the nostrils, to pinch the nose as we sustain a tone. If the tone is nasally, the sound will change. It will become muted and muffled or distorted when we block off those nasal passages. Now, this trick is really designed for checking to see if the tone is nasally, not necessarily for correcting it if it is. Pinching the nose may actually help some singers hear and feel the difference, and that may be enough for them to fix the problem. It can help them find the right physiological adjustment and also become more aware of the tonal differences between nasalized and non-nasalized singing. You'll actually feel a much stronger energy going through the mouth when you seal off the nasal passages like this. Other singers may need a little bit more help with this though. I find that the bilabial plosives, B and P, B, are useful pedagogical tools for eliminating nasality because they require a buildup of air pressure behind the closure at the lips. Air pressure can't sufficiently build up though if the nasal port is open. So when we form our plosive sounds, the nasal port is closed, which means that we can take advantage of this in our training. On single notes, scales, or arpeggios, for example, we can sing pa, pe, pi, po, poo. Any combination of plosive, vowel, and note will do. We can also sing various scales, B, 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 and then remove the B on all but the first note, B, and then remove the B altogether and keep the same coordination and quality of the vowel, E. So what you want to do is continually renew that vowel. Don't change anything about how you form it from the beginning to the end. Keep thinking clean and non-nasalized and clear, and have a good concept of that vowel for the pitch and register that you're singing in. Any exercises that incorporate plosives may be helpful, so feel free to slightly exaggerate the explosiveness of these sounds at first. Ba, ba, ba. There are a couple phonemic contexts in which nasality will tend to enter the sound, and we really need to be particularly watchful of this during singing. In speech, we have a lot of co-articulation in which the surrounding speech sounds influence each other and they begin to adopt some of each other's characteristics. When it comes to nasality, we have anticipatory co-articulation in which the vowel is followed by a nasal consonant. In this case, the vocal tract prematurely adjusts in anticipation of that upcoming nasal sound, and then the soft palate starts to lower during the production of the vowel sound. For example, in the word home, we have the O vowel followed by an M. The tendency for many speakers and singers is to lower the soft palate during the production of the O in anticipation of the M. Home, home. We also have carryover co-articulation in which the speaker fails to close the nasal port immediately after a nasal consonant, and then some nasality can be heard in at least the first part of the vowel that follows the nasal consonant. Me, me. When we have a vowel sound that's sandwiched between two nasal consonants, like in the words mean and moan, keeping the nasality out of the vowel becomes especially tricky. I like to have my students break down the word into its individual phonemes, sound out each of these sounds separately, clearly, without any kind of nasalization of the vowel, and then gradually reconnect the word. So if we were to take the word moan, we would separate out the speech sounds, the phonemes, and if necessary, take out our little pinchers and pinch the nose during the production of the vowel to listen for any hints of nasality. O, n, o, n, o, n. Moan. And we would continue like that. We have to really think about and focus on the vowel being clear from start to finish. And this means being very precise with the movements and actions of our soft palates. We tend to speak very, very quickly, and that soft palate has to move up and down very, very quickly. The most important component of the solution, however, is altering our mental concept of the tone. You're going to hear me say this a lot. If inside our heads we envision the tone that is thin and nasally, and that's what we perceive as a good sound, our instruments are going to adjust to create that sound quality. We need to learn to differentiate between nasality and non-nasality and begin to discern the differences between desirable and undesirable tone. Many singers who aim to place the sound in the mask or to place it frontally very often have thin and nasally voices as a symptom. They try to aim or direct or shoot that sound into the mask target, and then very often they end up filtering some of that sound through the nose because nasal resonance generates these frontal sensations, and then they mistakenly use these sensations as confirmation that they've got it right. But in actuality, the sensations that they're experiencing aren't indicative of good resonance balance, just of resonance in the nasal cavities. And then these habits become deeply ingrained in their muscle memory and their mental concepts of that vowel. Even within a classical training method, I was taught this concept of forward placement, but it was always taught as a visual imagery with the understanding that tone can't actually be placed, and that any sensations of resonance along the bony structures of the face are a symptom or a result of the vocal tract being configured in a given manner rather than the cause or the precipitant of correct physiological adjustment. So, when it comes to sensations, we want to feel a sense of freedom and openness and efficiency in the throat. And when we achieve that correct coordination, sympathetic resonance in the mask region tends to result. Again, it's a symptom or a result, not a cause. I also want to note that some singers have issues with the tensor muscles of the soft palate being chronically tight or hypertonic. These tensor muscles are part of the swallowing reflex, so they get used a lot. I encourage these singers to practice inhaling deeply, deep, quiet inhalation. If it helps, use the soft inhaled k to encourage the soft palate to lift away from the tongue. It should be very soft, almost inaudible. And over time, this will help to trigger velar elevation and release these hypertonic muscles. If your tensor muscles are chronically tight or contracted, singing is just going to reinforce their behavior, that muscle memory. So train them to release in silence first. A few years back, I had a student who had a chronically low soft palate, and he would take walks around his business park every lunch break at work and simply practice inhaling deeply with a nice feeling of stretch in the soft palate, high and wide, a little lift of the cheeks underneath the eyes. And after just a couple weeks of this kind of diligent daily practice, his soft palate issues were mostly resolved. So don't assume that you can only train your soft palate to elevate by singing or phonating, and don't underestimate the importance of resetting or recalibrating your vocal tract at the time of inhalation. One more note, some singers denasalize their speech sounds, and that can easily be confused for hypernasality. Denasalization refers to a lack of nasal resonance when there should be some present. In English, this is very specific to the M, N, and NG. Singers who denasalize their sound will tend to sound like they have a little bit of a stuffy nose or nasal congestion, and these singers actually need to do more work with humming and alternating between humming and vowels, and also learn to be able to move the soft palate down more swiftly when they need to pronounce those nasal consonants. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope this video has been helpful and informative. As always, feel free to connect with me by leaving a comment below, messaging me on the SingWise Facebook page, or emailing me at Karen@singwise.com. That's KARYN@singwise.com. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you will receive notifications whenever I post new videos.